So I've watched the beginning of Mueller's testimony. It's currently in recess, so I wanted to give my thoughts on it. First thought is Mueller looks terrible. He looks old and feeble, like he doesn't know what he's talking about. I understand that he's trying to be careful because I think he might be in some legal trouble himself after everything's outed. So he's trying to say, what page is that on? I refer just to the report. But there are several things that are mind-blowing. First, though, let me get to the Democrats. The Democrats are, as predicted, they're just using this as a dog and pony show to say, oh, isn't it true that you said that people in Trump's campaign talked to some Russians? Yeah, I said that. Isn't it true you said that he could have committed obstruction? Yeah, I said that. That's it. They know that their media allies will continue to spew this as if it's new allegations, and that the average person doesn't have time to go through the whole document and see the contradictions and know the background to see everything in context. For example, sounds really bad. Trump's team had connections to Russians, right? Except they ignore the fact that Hillary's team also had connections to Russians. This is something that happens all the time. There was nothing illegal that went on with any of Trump's team connected to any Russian whatsoever. They just want to throw out Trump's team and Russians enough that you think, oh, there must be something to it, when clearly there isn't, even after a 2-year investigation. So the Democrats aren't doing anything I didn't expect. But even with them, I think they're starting to see frustration with Mueller, where it's like, the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, he's constantly, like, names that he should know, like Glenn Simpson, Veselnitskaya, other names. He's like, well, yeah, what the report said, what page are we on again? Like, it just is a really bad look. It looks like the guy that was running the show isn't the Superman that we were told. He seems to be more than fallible and someone who maybe doesn't have a grasp of as much of the information as some guy like me sitting in a car right now does. Now, let's get to the things that are really damning. I thought the Republicans have done an okay job, but it could be a lot better. The first person I saw that was Republican, I forget his name, but he was hammering down specifically on how what was stated in the very first line was that Mueller was expected to give a prosecutorial or declination decision to the Attorney General, and he did not do that with the second section, the obstruction section. In fact, he went without offering that and just said a bunch of crap that was like, oh, and Trump's possibly guilty, but I can't prove that he's innocent. One of the Republicans hammered down specifically on how this is absurd. It is an inverse of the idea of innocent until proven guilty, and Mueller was unable to give one time in history that the Attorney General's office or the DOJ or anyone else, the FBI, acted in such a way where they said, well, we couldn't exonerate. He was asked to show what specific DOJ policy that he had that mirrored that rhetoric, that he was allowed to do that, and he was like, well, it's just a different situation. No, it's not. It's different in the sense that you want to smear Trump. That's what's different about it. But the fact that it's never happened before and we've had serious investigations proves that this is somehow breaking a precedent. And again, I understand people that hate Trump. You might be my friends out there that hate Trump. This isn't a good thing. Because when you get a president or when you get an elected official, that the FBI and the DOJ decides to just be like, well, we can't prove anything, but we'll use our allies in the media to smear them. You're going to be really upset then. Or if it happens to you, God forbid. That's not what prosecutors are supposed to do. So he didn't have a good answer for that. He also, unbelievably, won't answer anything about his decisions after the dossier, or I'm sorry, after the report came out. So if you remember, Barr came out and truthfully said, here's exactly what Mueller concluded, that there was no that he was unable to find any criminal conspiracy in part 1 that showed that anyone in Trump's campaign or any American conspired in a legal fashion with any Russian, and part 2 of obstruction, he wasn't able to convict or charge or exonerate Trump of obstruction of justice. That's what Barr said. The media went nuts. No. This isn't what Mueller said. This isn't what Mueller said. Mueller's team leaked a letter that he sent to Barr, to the press, that said, we're not happy with how the media is covering this. We're not happy with the tone of it. He won't answer any questions about that. He's just like, I don't answer about decisions, internal decisions. Well, that's a big problem, and hopefully someday he's actually being investigated criminally and actually has to answer why these one-sided decisions keep coming. Remember, every decision that he offers, and I'll talk about a little more here, is constantly to harm Trump more and to let people not connected to Trump or specifically connected to Hillary, the DNC, or the intel agencies as late as possible. Constantly. Now, the two big things that I got out of this, both with the behest of the Republicans, were, one, he refuses to answer why he didn't mention the fact that, like, people connected to Hillary's team, that Hillary's team was paying, had connections to Russians. This is absurd. He just says, it's outside of my purview. The purview of this investigation of the special counsel was two things. One, to investigate all instances of Russian interference into our election system. And second, to see if anyone in Trump's campaign illegally conspired with those Russians in doing so. So what exactly is outside of his purview from investigating Russians trying to interfere in our election? And in fact, he talks specifically, let's take Veselnitskaya, the Russian lawyer that met Trump, Don Jr. in Trump Tower, right? Even though nothing came of that and Mueller's team had 14 pages about that, they neglected to say, oh, by the way, she was actually a client of Glenn Simpson from Fusion GPS, the same company that put together the dossier that was paid by Hillary Clinton. Forgets to mention that he had dinner with Glenn Simpson had dinner with Veselnitskaya the night before and the night after Trump Tower's meeting. He just said that was out of my purview. No, it's not. If you're going to smear Trump and say, oh, this Veselnitskaya, she's a bad person, Trump met with her, your purview was to talk about all Russian interference. If this was an agent that was of possible Russian interference, why would her connections to Hillary's team be outside of his purview? If that's true, and that was the purview of Mueller, then Mueller is basically admitting, I did not look at any connections to any Russians unless they were connected to Donald Trump, which means that his original investigation about investigating Russian interference is a sham, and that we now need a second investigation looking specifically at Democrat connections to Russians, because apparently that was all outside of Mueller's purview. The same is true with the Steele dossier. Remember, the Democrats used Fusion GPS to hire a foreign agent, Glenn Simpson, from the UK, to get dirt on Trump from Kremlin officials. That is the number one most effective piece of Democratic interference that we see. More than any emails that they supposedly hacked, more than Russian trolls posting on Facebook. What started this all off? What have we talked about for 3 years? Polls say that over 50% of Democrats still believe the allegations in the Steele dossier that was sourced by Kremlin agents. Now, if they really wanted to interfere with our system, that is the number one most effective way to do it. Yet Mueller says, oh, it was outside of my purview. I couldn't investigate. Me, who was appointed specifically to investigate Russian interference, was unable to look at the biggest example of Russian interference. Please, the Republicans need to do a better job of hammering down. Show me how that's outside of your purview. He says, well, there's other people investigating it. So? If there are other people investigating Veselnitskaya, why was he able to talk about her in his report? Constantly, he constantly puts things in the worst possible light for Trump. He arrests people that are close to Trump. He lets people close to Hillary go off for the same crimes. Look at the FAR violations. Manafort was working with the Podesta Group. Podesta Group gets to sign papers. Manafort gets thrown in solitary confinement. Constantly, that's the decision. Now, he looks at anyone that remotely from Trump's campaign talked to any Russian, ignores all of the DNC connections to any Russian, even when they're more significant. Now, lastly, the last thing that this is just mind-blowing is Jim Jordan does a great job of talking about Joseph Mifsud. For those of you who don't know, after it was claimed the dossier was the start of the investigation, once that started to look really bad because it turned out that was Hillary Clinton paid for opposition research that was sourced by Kremlin agents, they changed their story and they said, oh, no, it was this Papadopoulos character. We now know that before Papadopoulos did anything, he had spies placed around him, including Stephen Halper and a woman named Azra Turk that's an alias. He had all these people that are connected to intelligence agencies all over the world constantly talking to him. Mueller, as Jim Jordan points out, Mueller says in his report that Joseph Mifsud was the one who told Papadopoulos that the Russians had dirty emails on Hillary. And then Papadopoulos talks to a Hillary-connected Australian diplomat and says, hey, Russians have dirt. Jim Jordan correctly points out as well that Mueller admits that Mifsud lied to the FBI 3 times. So Jim Jordan's claim is, if you're going to investigate Papadopoulos and have all these spying, if you're going to charge all these people like Papadopoulos and Flynn and Manafort for lying to the FBI, why did you not choose to charge Joseph Mifsud? He says, I can't answer that. That is absurd. Every single instance we see is him deciding, Mueller's team deciding, go soft on the Democrats, go soft on the intel community, go hard as possible on Trump and people connected to him. That's ridiculous. Why wouldn't the person who started this lie, who was, and Jim Jordan says, was he a U.S. or Russian intelligence agent? Because that's going to be the case. He's probably going to be a U.S. intelligence agent. If not, then he was a Russian agent. So why wouldn't he be charged? If you're going to charge 13, let's just go with the best possible story for the Democrats, that Mifsud was working on behalf of Russia's intelligence. Why would he not be charged when he clearly lied to the FBI? If Russian trolls were charged just for putting Facebook posts, why wouldn't a guy specifically lying to the FBI talking about dirty emails that the Russians have on Hillary, why wouldn't he be charged? Instead, Papadopoulos, the guy who just drunkenly mentioned it, he gets charged. Could it be because Papadopoulos is connected towards Trump and this was used as an excuse to spy on Trump? There's going to be a reckoning, and the Democrats that want to ignore this, it's unbelievable. Explain to me why this guy was allowed to lie to the FBI, who started the whole mess. That's the start of the investigation based on a lie. Mueller knows that this guy lied to the FBI, and yet he wasn't charged. Why is that? So look for more of this. I mean, Mueller looks terrible. He can't answer any of these questions. It's absolutely pathetic. We can't talk about decisions to charge people or not. Isn't that the dangers of this in the first place? You put someone there who's on a witch hunt to take Trump down. Even the judge in Manafort's case said, this isn't about getting Manafort. You people are doing whatever you can to try to take down Trump. So we see selective bias in who they decide to charge. We see them allow some people to lie to the FBI and charge other people for it. We see them only look at Russian interference when it's convenient for them to go after Trump, but ignore it when it's connected to Hillary's team or to the FBI officials. We see them deleting phones that have potential evidence after the IG wants them on Robert Mueller's iPhones that he gave Strzok and Page. We see him hiring people that we know hated Trump, such as people that used to work for the Clinton Foundation, hired as the lawyers going out. He refuses to talk about even his decisions after the report came out of the things that were leaked to the media. He won't talk about that. And he just looks like an inept buffoon. So yes, the Democrats will continue this. The media will have a totally different story. They'll say, oh, Mueller was excellent. Oh, man, those Democrats, yep, Trump, impeach. Oh, they talk. Did you hear that Trump's team had connections to Russians? He possibly obstructed. That'll be how the media spins it, but that's not the real story. So I encourage everyone to watch it for themselves. I'll be trying to watch the second part of it coming up. So look for me to be putting more material out in this. And I eventually want to go through step by step, painstakingly, the entire testimony and give my opinions on it. So thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe if you like this. Look for me to be putting more material out in Mueller's testimony, and have a good one.